Welcome to At the Heart of Health with Dr. James Marcum. In today's well-marketed world, it's hard to know who or even what to believe when it comes to health care. In each program, Dr. Marcum, a board-certified behavioral cardiologist, takes a balanced approach using common sense modern medicine and the ultimate source of truth, the Bible, recognizing that at the heart of health is love.
Today's topic is one you don't hear often in health programs. We're going to talk about abuse. Specifically, we're going to talk about how abuse can change your chemistry. And if you think about it, long-standing abuse, day after day, year after year, it damages the body. God just didn't make us to be abused. When this abuse happens, we have chemicals like adrenaline and cortisol, which goes up in our body, increases inflammation. If this goes on year after year, we're going to have damage. This might be symptoms like a heart attack, fast heartbeats, not sleeping well at night, then all the coping mechanisms that might go with this. We're so happy here to have Steve and Samantha Nelson with us. They are part of a ministry. Tell us about your ministry and how you got involved in dealing with this abuse.
Well, we started this ministry because we had gone through an experience of pastoral sexual abuse ourselves. And after coming out of it and healing, the Lord impressed upon us that we needed to do something to try to help others, because when we were going through it, Steve was searching for help online and wasn't finding much available. So we thought, you know, if we could write and put something together, if it would help just one more person, then what we'd gone through would be worth it. God would have turned that evil into something good. And so that's kind of how it got started, and we had a limited vision, thinking just one, because it's certainly been much more than that.
Now, were you actually having symptoms when this was all occurring?
My physical symptoms were pretty extreme. I had fibromyalgia, tinnitus, I couldn't sleep, I was depressed, obviously. I was suicidal, I was cutting myself, and those are very common symptoms for people who are being abused in this type of setting.
So your chemistry was changed?
Oh, yes.
And all too often I see people that have these type of symptoms, and sometimes we're quick to give them medication or some type of treatment that might not get at the core of the problem. Now, did this affect you are married. Does this affect the spouse? Did he have symptoms too?
You know, I did, because I was going to, after a certain amount of time, I started going to a counselor. And he realized I was very emotional, I was depressed, and I was having shakes and things, that he put me on some medication to help calm those nerves so I could start to think clearly and start to deal with the problems. But yeah, it's not just one person that's affected by this. If you're in a relationship with someone else, especially a spouse, it's going to affect them too.
Well, what we've done with Heartwise Ministries is people have sent questions from around the world regarding this subject, and I've grouped them together, and we're going to try to help people. Sometimes there might not be the right answer, but we're going to try to help them the best to change their chemistry for the good. And at least one thing we want to know is there is help out there. Yes. You're not alone.
Yes.
You know, there's things that can be done. There's a God out there that heals.
That's right.
So our first question says, 6 years ago, I was in an abusive relationship with my former pastor. I have lived in shame since that time. I do not know what I did wrong. I do not know where to start to find healing. So let's start with the first. She's lived in shame since. Let's talk about that.
6 years is a long time. My heart goes out to this person, because they've been dealing with something for 6 years that the quality of their life has just gone to null. It's very sad for them, but that's not how God wants them to live. That's not His plan for them. And that's why He's brought ministries like this into place, to help people understand what is the truth of the situation that they went through. And Samantha, I think, will explain a little bit more, but she needs to understand that this was not something that was her responsibility what happened to her, that it was an abusive situation. And when she understands that, she'll begin to see that, okay, now if I was abused by someone who I trusted, what is it that was my responsibility? Well, her responsibility right now is to get healing. Her responsibility is to come to God and let Him recreate her emotionally, physically, spiritually into his image.
So Samantha, she should not be ashamed, should she?
No, she should not be ashamed. People need to think of this as, you know, if a medical doctor, excuse me, because you're a medical doctor, we'll take that as an example. If a medical doctor has an inappropriate relationship with a patient, you're going to lose your medical license.
Correct.
Everybody can see that you have...
I would never practice again.
Yeah, this is professional exploitation. Same thing with a teacher and student, or a counselor and a counselee. When it comes to the church, it's even more so. When a pastor or someone in the role of spiritual authority takes advantage of someone under his care in his congregation, because the extra damage that comes in is spiritual. You're bringing God into this picture, and that's devastating.
You know, this is a sort of a risky topic to talk about when it comes to healing, because, you know, you occasionally hear about it in the media. And you've noticed it's not something that happened yesterday. It's all these things have come up after years and years of suppressing it and hiding it, and all the damage has occurred.
Because of all that shame.
I know, it's just terrible.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because people will deal like this person for 6 years. There's a woman that after 80 years finally contacted this ministry, and she, for 60 years, she'd kind of pushed this in the background, didn't deal with it, but you know it affected her. She just was, for 80 years, she had this pain that was in her heart. Her relationship with God was damaged because of this, and finally, though, thank God, she's able to get help after all this time.
Now let's try to help this person with the second part of the question, is she doesn't know where to start to find healing or help. I guess that's pretty common. Where do you go? You can't go to your pastor. Sometimes you can't go to your husband. Where would you go?
We find that most people find us online, and we would recommend that you go to thehopeofsurvivors.com and start there. From there, there are also links that you can look up other counselors if you want to talk to somebody in your area. But the information that's on our website helps people generally to define what they've gone through, to help them not feel so alone in it, and to help them understand the dynamics that were involved so that they don't have to carry around that shame.
So if this person, Steve, went to thehopeofsurvivors.com, started getting some information, started to say, yeah, you know, I don't need to feel ashamed. I do have a problem, and this might be causing my symptoms, which might be causing my blood pressure, my palpitations, or all this money I've spent on other diagnostic tests, for instance.
Yeah.
Right.
So she says, listen, I need something more. I need to talk to someone. I need something more in this healing. What would she do then?
Generally, that's people who come to that place, they'll email us. Okay. They'll send us an email. Samantha will respond to that email. We'll start opening the dialogue. What happened to you? How did this situation transpire? What's going on in your life today? And that's the initial step that they need to take. They really need to reach out, and it's hard because they've been abused. They don't trust. They have difficulty even trusting us, and we've gone through the same thing they've been through, but trust is broken, and once trust is broken, rebuilding that trust is one of the most difficult things that can happen, but they need to take that step.
Yeah. Now, for our healthcare providers, this might be a very interesting prescription to write. You know, if I found someone that I thought was falling in this and their symptoms might be coming from this, I might just write down the website, hopeofsurvivors.com, and give this and say, listen, I'm not trained in this. I don't know all the ins and outs. Now, but why don't you go to this website? Now, our listeners are sure want to know, I don't know of anyone that gets degrees in this or, you know, a doctorate of dealing with these type of problems. Where did you get your expertise and training? And is there special courses, or what makes this ministry something that's legitimate?
I want to say the School of Hard Knocks.
Okay, well, no, sometimes that's the best experience.
It was the personal experience, and then allowing God at work in our lives to heal us and to educate us and teach us from His Word. But then after that took place, we also enrolled in Christian counseling courses and received our credentials as Christian counselors, as biblical counselors. Something that you were mentioning, though, as a prescription to write out the website. For medical professionals or for other counselors, you know, we have a set of brochures that they can place in their office so that anyone sitting in the waiting room can pick them up and read them and contact us for help, too.
Yeah, they probably, one of the best things for them to do is to be able to contact the ministry, because that contact will open the door that they need to start facilitating healing.
And one other point, seems like so many people get into trouble when they're with their authoritative figure alone, pastor, whatever. Is there any, you know, hints that this might lead to something that they don't want to go into?
That's a good question.
You know what I'm saying? You know, cues that, you know, for those that might not have ever been abused, but, you know, putting themselves in a dangerous situation.
one thing we
we talk about prevention.
Yes, one
Yes,
thing we
we do.
try to encourage not only pastors but people who would be counseling with the pastor, congregational members, don't counsel alone. Because when you're alone, it's that emotional tie can easily start to develop. And that emotional tie is what creates a vulnerability and also can create exploitation. So if you're going to go counsel with your pastor, take a friend, take your spouse. If he's not the one abusing you necessarily, take a friend, take your sister, mother, somebody. Make sure that somebody else is there to, as an accountability person for that counseling
Or
situation.
counsel with someone of the same sex, if that's
You know,
possible.
in medicine, we talk so much about prevention, and then we talk about treatment. So you sort of work on the treatment arm and the prevention. What are some of the things that people have come to you that red flags early on that something wasn't going well, Samantha? Is there anything that we could share with, someone said, hey, that's happening to me, I don't want to get into this?
Yeah, there's a lot. A lot of things that the pastors who will abuse generally tend to single out the woman, to put her in positions within the church ministry, to elevate her, to constantly affirm her and build her up, which can be good things, but there's usually an ulterior motive there. So that's something to look for. You also want to look out for the Lone Ranger pastor who is not accountable to anyone, or who has his board of elders or whatever under his control. Those types of people are the power that exists that they seek. They're more likely to become abusive. And if they're constantly singling you out and wanting to talk with you or meeting with you privately, that's something you need to be aware of. If they're constantly complimenting you, wow, that's a great dress, you look good today, be aware.
So it doesn't always have to be physical abuse, it can be mental abuse too?
Well, it starts like that, and then it leads to the other. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the spiritual abuse that goes along with the pastoral sexual abuse is tremendous, because many of these pastors will use the story, we've had this come up many times, David and Bathsheba, and they'll use that as an excuse to do what they're doing to this woman.
Samantha, this is very interesting. We're going to go to a break and be right back to talk with Steve and Samantha Nelson about their ministry.